Hi, this is Matt with State of Flux with yet another 52-week movie challenge. Everyone's a critic. Let's see, we are on week 33-ish. The directive this week was a sequel. I decided to go with a sequel that I've already reviewed, so you can backtrack and watch my original review. I am reviewing the sequel to Alien, titled Aliens. Year release, 1986. This was actually released on the day I was supposed to be born, however I was 2 weeks overdue. So I came out on a different monumental movie of the same year, which I'll review some other time. Anyway, aspect ratio is 2:21, so it's not true widescreen, it's almost widescreen. Runtime 2 hours and 34 minutes. Genre is action and science fiction. Rated R, starring Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Paul Reiser, Lance Henriksen, and Carrie Henn. Directed by James Cameron. Produced by 20th Century Fox. Written by James Cameron from a story by him, David Giler, and Walter Hill. Music by James Horner. And it only won 2 Oscars. That for best visual effects and best sound effects editing. However, it was also nominated for Best Actress Sigourney Weaver, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Editing, and Best Score. Why did I choose this particular film? Like I said before, I wanted to review something that I had already reviewed the original film for, so you could kind of have a baseline of what I thought of the original versus the sequel. Have I seen this film before? Yes, I have many, many times. At one point, this was my all-time favorite movie. Now, it's not that I've cooled on it, I have just sort of been more honest with myself, and I think I was saying that this was my favorite film because it was my favorite film from childhood. I still love it and have very few complaints. This is still a perfect 4-star movie, but it's no longer my favorite movie. Probably would be in my top 10 though. Would you recommend this film? Why or why not? Absolutely. This movie is fantastic. As far as sequels go, it is the touchstone that you want to achieve. This, Bride of Frankenstein, The Empire Strikes Back, and to some extent like Terminator 2. These are the sequels that everybody kind of turns to and says, this is what we should do, what did these movies do right, this is how we should make a sequel. Oftentimes, studios learned the wrong lesson from the movies that I just mentioned, but this is an example of a sequel done right. This is a film that I think is far superior to the original film. I know the original film has a lot of love. You can watch my review where I kind of tear down and pick at that original Alien film. I think it's an okay movie, a good movie, especially on its technical merits, but as a movie on its own, I think it has a lot of failings. This film, as a movie on its own, is extraordinarily good, very captivating, and as a sequel to that original film, I think is quite good. However, it's the sequel aspect of the film that is kind of the most troubling, and I'll touch on that later. It's not that it's troubling, this is a very good sequel. Builds upon what worked the first time around and then raises it up. The issue comes with how to view this film the best possible way. Again, I think the last question almost always is, do you have any notes? That's the note I'm going to touch on. But yes, I would recommend this film. This is a brilliant movie. Rather than just do another horror story set in space, this has horror elements to it, but it shifts genre, and it shifts focus. The original movie a lot of people talked about as a character study of truckers in space. However, there was very little character. Most of the characters in the film, even the ones you got to know and like Ripley, like Parker, like Dallas, were more just archetypes. They didn't really have much in the way of character. This film becomes a character focus. This is more of a character study in a true form in that it is Ripley's story through and through. It gets down to the absolute core essence of her being, and you get to see her grow, see her evolve, and see what makes her tick. This is an extraordinary study of that Ripley character. She is considered one of the greatest characters in the genre of horror and science fiction mostly because of this movie. The work she did in the first movie is just Sigourney Weaver selling it as an actress. The work that's done with this movie is done through the way her character is written, and also what Sigourney Weaver brings to this as an actress. It is. I could go on forever. I won't. But I could just gush about how well written it is from a character standpoint. But it also evolves the alien itself. The alien in the first one was just that. It was alien. It was a monster that kind of grew and evolved within the film to serve the structure of that a slasher film necessitates. The alien could do whatever it needed to do in any given environment to make it scary, but nothing necessarily had an a biology that would have necessarily made sense. This film works to make this creature more grounded in reality and more believable by giving it the kind of ecosystem of that of ants and whatnot, and comparing them to ants or bees, the xenomorphs. It sort of grounds it in a reality that makes it make far more sense, and also understandable why a company would desire to try to grab this thing and study it for its own weapons gain, rather than how it was presented in that first film. I think everything on that aspect works stronger. This is also a James Cameron film, so it has a very firm message that it's trying to give, and it's about how corporate greed and corporate politics really govern the bad things that happen. This film is a very obvious allegory to the Vietnam War, and it works very strongly as an allegory to the Vietnam War, in that you are following these gung-ho group of fighters who have no idea what they're really getting into, but have been indoctrinated with the belief that they are the best because they have the best firepower, but they're up against something they know nothing truly about, and they get their asses handed to them. And all of this is manipulated in the background by corporate greed and the desire to attain more. So the Vietnam allegory plays out very well. However, I will condemn that on some respect, because if you look at us, the United States, as the Marines, then you have to look at the Vietnamese as the alien, which therefore you're reducing an entire race of people from an entire land to monsters that have no voice of their own. But I digress. The movie also works on being an exploration of mothers. The whole film, Ripley is trying to grapple with the child that she lost, the child she never got to know in her 57 years separated from that first movie to this one. And she finds a young girl who loses everything and essentially adopts her, and how that parental love that drives you will stop at nothing, and how that's reflected in the aliens as well. Yet again, creating a sort of grounded reality for the creature as well. It's so common that the mothers will go head to head for their children. I love it. All right, I need to keep moving, or I'm going to literally talk about this movie all day. Which character were you most able to identify with or connect with, and in what way? I guess it would have to be Ripley. She's truly the only one with real character development, as well as Newt. Most of the other characters are relatively wooden or cardboard, like you could hurl, like I did hurl at that first movie, but you could also hurl that argument at most James Cameron movies. He's really good at developing 2 or 3 characters, and then everybody else is really likable, but they're just an archetypal character, stock character, if you will. But Ripley is the one that you are led to identify with, you, having watched the first film, know that everything she says is absolute truth. And everybody in this film uh, thinks that her story is insane. And, like, how could you not? So you as the audience, she's a great posit for the audience because you know that this is genuine what she is up against. And these people who are being all cocky with their weapons really genuinely don't know what they're up against. It's great. So there's that. I guess the designed audience posit is also Hudson, who's freaking out the whole time. I never related to Hudson or anything like that, but he is fun. He's excellently portrayed by Bill Paxton. The whole cast, everybody in this film is phenomenal. Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez in a now probably questionable, that would never happen these days kind of way. But she is great as Vasquez. Yeah, there's no weak performance. And even like Paul Reiser, who knew that guy had that great of a dramatic performance in him, or could be that scummy. Like, you know him from Mad About You nowadays, or as the comedian. This is where I first saw him. So when I found out that he was in like a comedic TV show, that kind of wowed me. All right, best line or most memorable quote. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage pretty much summates the entire feature film. But the greatest line from this movie, how could it not be, is "Get away from her, you bitch." I just watched the movie right now, and I've seen this movie 50,000 times. Like, literally probably in the 400 time range. I used to watch this before going to school every morning for several years, and then when I'd get home I'd finish however much longer I had left in the film. I did this for years. Anyway, so I've seen this movie a lot. I was literally cheering in my seat and laughing out loud audibly with that great power shot of the camera, like whipping around to her. The thing rises, she's moving, and then all of a sudden, "Get away from her, you bitch." Perfect. Best line ever. Were you surprised by the ending? What would you do differently? When I first saw it, I had no idea what to expect. This was my first introduction to anything alien. I saw this like on a Saturday when I was 8 years old, and it was playing on Fox in the daytime. So I saw it edited for television, and I had no idea what was going to happen. So I was elated. However, as I was watching it, it was triggering memories, and by the time I got to the "Get away from her, you bitch" line, I realized I had seen it once. I have an uncle who now lives in San Francisco, who showed it to me when I was about 2 or 3, when I was really, really super into Ghostbusters. And he was like, "Oh, well, this just came out on the VHS. Let's watch it. You love Sigourney Weaver? You're going to love her in this too." And there were 2 or 3 moments that I recognized, including the "Get away from her, you bitch" moment, from that, watching it when I was that young. And I still have access to that memory of seeing it for the very first time when I was incredibly young, of her hanging with her elbow in from the airlock thing. What would I do differently? There is actually one thing I would change about the ending of this film. The fight between Ripley and the Queen Alien and the Power Loader has no score to it. That needs a score. I don't know why there's not a score there. Every other action beat throughout the entire film has like a gripping score. That's the only part that just plays in like sound effects and silence, and it just needs a score to keep that momentum. Was the sequel better or worse than its predecessor? Why? I already delved into it. It is significantly better than its predecessor. There's the shift in its tone could be the argument as to why it's not. Alien set up a certain standard that it's horror in space. This is more terror in space, but is truly a war movie. So you could argue that it doesn't necessarily continue what was the groundwork that was laid with that first film. So I could see that argument. And my argument for this would be, I think the Alien franchise is unique in that each individual film of the first three works better as a standalone film. Alien works as its own movie with a beginning, middle, and end, and it kind of doesn't need a sequel. Aliens almost works better if you've never seen the first one, and so that the audience posit isn't Ripley, but the Marines, where it's like, yeah, there's this alien thing. We've got these guns. Look at all our guns and our weapons and stuff like that. If you're just hearing her story, and the movie is very good at doing what movies shouldn't do. Movies are always telling you to do the show, don't tell. This movie is constantly telling you, for over an hour in its runtime, how badass these aliens are and how they're going to just wipe out the entire Marine Corps. And you believe it because you've seen the first movie. But if you haven't seen that first movie, you're just constantly being fed for over an hour in its 2.5-hour runtime how tough these guys are, so that when you finally start showing and no longer tell, it has weight to it, where it's like, holy crap, she wasn't kidding, this is messed up, and then you latch onto her firmer. Having seen it that way the first time myself, I do think that's kind of the best experience for watching this movie. It is a perfect sequel in that the first movie's kind of irrelevant. It works better through Ripley's words rather than seeing what Ripley endured in that first film. However, I do suggest going back and watching that first film to see how you get to that point. But Alien 3, and I'll touch on this at some other point because I imagine I'll review all of these at some point in my life, kind of works the same way, where Alien 3 works best if you're just listening to Ripley's story rather than seeing what came before, and it doesn't have the problematic elements of killing off the fucking survivors. But whatever, I'm over it. Did this film meet your expectations? Why or why not? Yeah, upon rewatching it, I was concerned that maybe I would have cooled on the film. I certainly haven't. This movie is just jaw-droppingly good. Easily my favorite James Cameron film, and that's saying something. This is a man who made The Terminator, made Terminator 2, made Oscar Gold with Titanic. All of those films I think are extraordinary, perfect films, and Avatar I am a defender of, even though I definitely recognize that film's complaints. I do think it's extraordinarily good as well. So, and The Abyss is fantastic. If you haven't seen The Abyss, you should watch The Abyss. Anything else I would like to add? Not really. I kind of talked about the one thing I was going to hold off about by saying that in an unusual move, the Alien franchise works best as standalone movies, viewed standalone, where you watch nothing before, nothing after. Aliens is a perfect standalone film. If you never watch Alien, it works wonderfully well. Almost better than if you have watched Alien. And if you've never watched Alien 3, you will be satisfied with the happy family conclusion that this film brings to you. So, yeah. There you have it. Let's see what our challenge is next week. A film set during the Great Depression. That sounds exciting. I'll see what I can do there. Let me know, do you like Alien better than Aliens, or Aliens better than Alien? What is your favorite film in the Alien franchise? Drop that down in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Peace.